Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, we're going to go into the mindset of a beautiful young lady and her journey in that beast mindset. And the topic today with this story is very unique because we all go through some different parts of our life. Let's call it trauma. But trauma has a ugly way of showing its appearance to us in different shapes, form, and fashions. Today on the show, we have a young lady that's going to explain how she broke through deep pattern trauma or things that has happened into her life and how she managed to overcome it and basically how to enjoy a productive life that's almost stress-free. Me personally, I want to go on this journey because I want to know how it was done myself. So without further ado, all the way from New Orleans, great place to visit, the beautiful Shaylee Edwards. How you doing, Shaylee?
Hi, Andre. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Before we get deep into this story, because I know it's going to be somewhat emotional too, tell the viewers a little bit about you before we get started.
Sure. I thought you were going to ask if it was a real beanbag chair.
We're going to talk about that too.
I guess, briefly, I live in New Orleans. I've been here for 4 years. I absolutely love to be active and to dance. I'm an artist as well. And I've been on a really rich journey of self discovery and learning how to translate and share those tools for and with other people for about 10 years now.
Mm-hmm. You talked about your journey begins with a childhood moment where your father had some emotional problems, emotional trauma, so to speak. Let's go there. What was your family like growing up? What was that like?
Yeah, I think that similar to a lot of people who are exploring themselves, I found that my parents, my father particularly, was downstream from several generations of poverty and violence and abuse. And my siblings and I were on the front line of, I'll say, like the brunt of that. And it looked like him having a lot of mental and emotional challenges that created a really chaotic environment for us.
When you say, give the viewers a little bit of idea of what it was like when you mentioned, and more importantly, how old were you when you start to really recognize the behavior of your father that started to resonate with you? Because when you're a kid at certain ages, you really don't understand exactly what an unhealthy behavior is like when it comes to parents, because you're still dealing with your brothers and sisters and cousins. So that's a different ballgame. But this is your household, your father. When did these behaviors start to resonate and started to affect you and your siblings?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. You don't see your own water, and that's kind of how deep patterns perpetuate their effect. You don't recognize what you're doing because you've always done it, whether that's adapting emotionally to somebody or accepting less than makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me probably, oh gosh, I had to rail my head against a bunch of things until I was like, you know what? I better pop the hood and look and see what's happening on the inside. So I think around 2016 actually was when I turned to face it directly and made it pretty much the focus of my life until I could feel satisfied with a new version of myself and my relationship with the world.
What was happening in 2016? What was that
I
awakening?
was making interesting. I was making interesting choices, and so just a pattern of um, pain through romantic relationships, and I was having trouble getting a foothold financially, and it wasn't through lack of desire or lack of ability. There just seemed to be this continuing disconnect.
And let's go back to your father for a minute. How was his behavior impacting yours?
Well, I guess like I think the most long-standing effect had been on my expectations around stability and emotional availability.
Mhm.
So he, being an alcoholic, being bipolar, created an environment that was very unpredictable. And also, the way that he dealt with how he felt was lame. And in that sort of dynamic, being a bright young child, I sort of derived like, I must not, this must be who I am.
Mhm.
And that's when we're looking at deep patterns, that's the deepest as far as I can tell, which is identity.
Where was your mom?
My mom was on the other side of the state. They divorced when I was 5, and my dad was able to get full custody of my sister and I.
Your dad was able to get full custody of two daughters, and I guess they didn't do a test to determine if he had any illnesses. And I guess at the time you might have been too young to even talk to the courts about anything that you really probably wasn't even familiar with that was going on in the house to begin with.
Well, I'm from a pretty small town, and there were the judge was familiar with some other members of my family, and there was some power pool in place, and that was the way that the custody fell. And my dad also was very brilliant in many ways and very articulate and can be very charming at that time. And so I think a lot of people deal with it. You said it yesterday with narcissistic type tendencies. And I think you gotta be careful with that word because you staple it on things and you might miss what's really there. So I put that on it gently, but it did look a lot like manipulating the narrative.
Did anybody
Very convincing.
did anybody outside of your family structure see what you and your sisters were going through?
You would think I had some friends' parents who did, but again, my dad was very convincing in other ways and could just kind of tilt it or turn it so that the light hit it in a way that things could continue.
How was you able to adapt, you and your sister, to that situation? And what kind of were you guys being? Was your father more of that? Let me rephrase this. Was the environment more physical? Was it more verbal? Was it, how was the trauma inflicted on you? Basically, what I'm trying to say. Did it come from all angles?
It was primarily mentally and emotionally, and I think that adaptation wise, we handled it differently. So I'm very intuitive. So when I'm working with somebody or even with myself, what I found is there's this incredible high side to your adaptations that if you can learn to wield them with intention and awareness, it can have an amazing impact. So I think of people who have been through traumatic experience like X-Men, like you mutate. And until you learn how to really lead your mutation, it can be quite harmful to yourself and others. So I was very empathic and able to read people and adapt to and anticipate their emotions. And that's great to survive when you're young. But as an adult, that really narrows the freedom that you claim for yourself.
How much you lost your sister? We'll get to that in a minute. How close were you and your sister, and how was it impacting her? I know you had to be close to her. There's a 5 year difference. You're older than her, but I'm pretty sure if you're in an environment that you deem to be unhealthy, how was you and your sister coping together as a team? You came up with a mutation device for yourself. What was what was hers, or did she share with you what hers was?
She actually didn't cope as well. And that's, as I told you in our pre interview, she committed suicide when she was 20. And the way that she responded to our environment was kind of seeing it how it was.
Mhm.
And that call to reality didn't serve her. She didn't play around the pieces that were set where I was willing to sort of yes and the world I was given. And so I think in varying degrees, much of our like Western population does that. You know, we're presented with this collective narrative. History is this, you should be this way. Mass media says that. We sort of take this world without question and play within it, often to our discomfort. And she was like, no, I'm good. And um, she ended up getting mixed into a crowd and using drugs and starting to escape her discomfort that way. And we were very close, incredibly close. I actually have a tattoo on my arm with a note from her suicide. This is on the heavier side, but she said, "Tell Shay I love her more than anything, and I know she tried." And so I have her handwriting more than anything on my arm. So it was quite a devastating loss.
Let me explain to the viewers here exactly how deep patterns of someone else's trauma can manifest into your reality. And I'm sorry for the loss of your sister. The question I'm trying to come up with, I know this is eyesight, you know, so to speak, but looking back, she was 20 years old, you was 25. Knowing what you know now, knowing that these patterns have to be broken, what do you think that you could have done or should have been done to help not only yourself preserve the life of your sister, but to also help the one person that really had the trauma, which is your father?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, at that time, I've always been very into personal development. My entire life, I've been interested in suffering. I read accounts of slavery and the Holocaust as a child, probably because it resonated in some ways. And somehow inside of me thought, there must be a way I can be or become that will make me good enough for something that felt better. And so I had a lot of tools, even at that time, that I was trying to offer her, exercise, rest, all these different things. But what I didn't understand was that where I had walled off and not taken the world personally, she had taken it quite personally and felt this very deep, heavy pain. And I think that that's what my father felt and feels, and other people up the line who are perpetuating action without awareness, not really seeing the effect that they're having on other people. And I essentially dedicated my life after her death to being able to develop a skill set to help her. And it took me going to a dark place myself to really understand what is required to find the light and to reveal it within yourself. And it's trusting how you feel. It's
Mm.
taking a moment. It's as simple as allowing yourself to relax into your feelings, detach it from the narrative, and allow the emotional energy room to express. And so it's being with yourself without judgment. Every time we have a feeling and we think, oh, I shouldn't be mad, I shouldn't be sad, and we try to corral ourselves in a different direction without first honoring the initial feeling, we're denying ourselves, we're denying the worth of our experience, the presence that, and the essentially the seed of the wound upstream is that it's not okay for you to be, period. And every time you try to correct yourself, you try to deny your feelings, it's just compounding that initial idea, I'm not okay. I'm not okay as I am. And so, in offering yourself presence to your experience, you actually create the opportunity to transform. Now, with someone like my dad who has more, let's say, like mechanical issues, I think that there's other things that he could seek, but evidencing your experience seems to be a good place to start and creating enough ground to be able to move forward.
But energy cannot be destroyed, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It cannot be destroyed. Um, and that's sad because individuals may not know what type of energy that they may have. One may overpower the other. Was your father still living upon the passing of your sister, or
Yeah, he's still living.
what was his? And I know this is probably touching, but I just got to ask these questions because I'm pretty sure the viewers would ask. I could just imagine the loss of my children. I may can't understand what I've done to impact them if I don't recognize that I have emotional baggage that I'm bringing into my family. And evidently he didn't, or it wouldn't have gotten to where it's gotten to. But you yourself, who've become a little bit more mutated, like you said, and you go to such a tragic funeral of your sister and his child. What was that feeling like? I mean, how did your emotions begin to change towards how you looked at your father, knowing that his energy, transferable energy, could have caused her to go here? Because you even went to a dark place. Did all this put you in a dark place? And if so, what was that dark place for you? And the second part of that question is, what was your father's reaction to the loss of his daughter?
Well, I think starting with him, I can't really, I don't feel comfortable speaking for him. I think that I've come to a place, like you said, I had an initial reaction, and over the course of the last 12 years, moved through. I actually write a tribute every year on International Page Day, which is the day that she left, that I kind of share reflections on my experience of grief. And over the years, it's evolved, and how I interpret the story, and the story I tell has evolved. And that's the underlying power of changing patterns, is you can change the story. Our patterns come from our interpretation of the world. Our interpretation is learned. And so when you want to make change, kind of the same I was saying with evidencing your experiencing, just bringing your experience, just bringing presence to your emotion without a mental story, then there's room to start to tell a new story. So the story that I told about him to me over time is, I really have incredible compassion for the amount of pain that he must experience. And I think that, when you're dealing with other people, compassion only works if it goes both ways. You must have compassion for yourself, compassion for the other, meaning this is what's comfortable for me, and establishing boundaries that still keep, your comfort, your peace intact. So for him, I really honor the experience that he's had. It hasn't been easy. And I think that let's see, like at the dark place myself, I think that honestly, my call has always been toward alleviating suffering. And I think that in asking deeply to be able to do that, I was led to a place where you see things apart from your power, apart from the role that you can play, making them different. And I really honor people who have gone there and go there. It's not easy. And unless you've gone there, you don't really know. I can sit across from people, and when I'm working with a client, I'm not referencing my personal experience, although I've clocked a lot of hours healing myself. I operate more as a channel. But there is a respect that I have for the human experience that suffering has afforded me, where it's like, I don't, I know that it can hurt. And in that, I don't have anything but love for. I can, I guess, create space to honor that in another person, which sometimes allows them to do that for themselves. And again, to me, that's sort of the initial seed, the correcting the initial flaw that you're not worthy. It's not okay for you to feel good.
You mentioned during the pre-interview that there was a brief separation from your father for a couple years, and then you was um, introduced to siblings, other siblings, if I'm not mistaken. Um, take me down the road. What that was like for you?
Well, so I had a half brother, and I have a half brother and half sister, and I left home when I was 17, and at that point, he closed the door to connection with them. And so it wasn't until 10 years later that I was able to reconnect with them. And that's actually a loss that got lost. I think that's why it's so interesting when we're looking at the water. Again, you can't see it. And so at that time at 17, I didn't have a toolkit to really be with that experience, and I wasn't supported in that externally. So that kind of got shelved so that I could continue living. And with the actual death of my sister, it hit it further. And so it took a little bit longer in the process to really stand and look at that. And even so, like while we're bringing up these like heavier pain points, I can't say enough that if you're on a healing journey, it's so important not to make it about what's gone or what happened so much as like what's here that you want to be here for. Like
Mm.
what and having a whole heart, what does that allow you? Is it and being open to love and being open to like what's important about that to you and really doing your best to keep that in your sight lines rather than looking for all the places that are bruised or broken. You can get lost in the dark.
Yeah, you mentioned being lost in the dark. At 17 years old, I mean, where in the heck did you go at 17 years old? And knowing that you dealing with what you just that you was dealing with what you was dealing with.
I went to live with my mom, and my sister was to come with us, but my dad played a hand in keeping her there. And in honesty, like I didn't really have a good grip on. It's again very hard to see things if your primary practice is rolling with them. So I didn't quite have a good grasp on the like let's say like how I'm maybe not unusual like maybe how intense that experience was.
Who reached out to who at 17 years old? Did you reach out to your mom or did your mom reach out to you?
My mom actually played a really active role in trying to get custody of us. I guess my entire time we were with him, but that wasn't shared with us as children. Like he wasn't validating that as happening. So at that point, I had really insisted like we need to. Uh, I don't want to leave my sister there, and so before I went to college, I wanted us to go live with her.
When you got a chance to be with your mom at 17 years old, what was that like for you with trying to understand what you was going through with your dad? I mean, because that had to be a change. Did she even have any idea of that's how your dad really was? Because usually, if there was a separation that involved custody, there's always two sides to the story. Does that make sense? So when you go to your mom, it, was it easy for you to share what you was dealing with your dad, and what was your mom's response to what you was going through?
Yeah, she knew who he was, and she is a perpetual uh, like she's like a sunflower. She's always looking for where it's light, and so she did the best that she could with the constraints of the system or the situation. When I left, I similarly just had like a really strong orientation toward forward motion, and so I like just took what I could and moved forward with it. It wasn't until so the deep patterns are interesting to me, particularly because I replicated. several times over, and one of them is being able to walk into a new situation kind of like disconnected from the one behind me. So that's kind of what I did there. I moved forward and just closed that off. So if someone is working, if they suspect they might be in a deep pattern, again, the first step is just allowing the possibility that it can go a different way and letting that desire kind of like fuel. I drew a little graphic there, but I'll share with you if you're interested. But belief in an alternative is huge. And I think what you're doing is incredible and creating space for people to see overcoming. Once you know that it can be done, it kind of like it's a lighthouse on a
Yeah.
shore. So showing instances of people overcoming things like that's real, that's life. And knowing that it can be done makes it possible for others.
Out of these deep patterns, you mentioned something earlier, and I shared this countless times on this platform. Patterns will eventually dissipate if you put in the work. But a lot of people who see these things, first of all, there has to be awareness. And at a young age, there wasn't awareness. Awareness had to show its ugly face through a lot of the trials and mistakes or the patterns that you was duplicating to realize that they was unhealthy patterns. But my question to you is, knowing what you've went through, knowing your loss, and not only the loss of your sister, but you also lost some dear close friends along this journey. I think through these journeys, there's always going to be what I call casualties of war, but let's just call it a energy war. Um, but with that said, how did you know which ones had to be addressed first? There's a lot of baggages in your house that's affecting every aspect of your life and certain people that surround you that unfortunately could not bear that situation. How did you know which ones that you needed to tackle first, and what was that like?
Yeah, I think, where knowing where to start, it's kind of like when people look at the world right now, there's so many things that aren't quite working. So it's almost without knowing like it's overwhelming. And so I think that's why people sit back from it or they're wait until they're pushed into it. And I think that really love, as cheesy as that is such a great place to start. Where do you want to grow? Where are you inspired to grow?
Mm-hmm.
Is it developing greater financial ground for yourself? Do you want to have closer relationships? Do you want to perform successfully? Like, what is it that you really want? And I find or found God along this path. And to me, that means a relationship to the non physical and infinite intelligence, the universe, spirit. And that also allowed me to develop a conversation and dialogue where what's being presented to me is the next step. I'm constantly looking at the world around me and inviting it to speak to me and to show me where am I growing and how can I best support that and really opening to divine support. And that's been and so my advice to people would be to ask, show me, and to be willing to engage with life as if it is correct. Acceptance, which is the same thing as mental silence, it is when you're not pushing against things, it's almost like trying to get the same door, same door, same door. It's locked. If you stop pushing, you step back, you see there's another door. And if you've been through trauma, it's so hard to relax your head. You gotta get in the door, you gotta get in the door, you gotta get in the door.
Mm-hmm.
And learning how to control your nervous system, learning how to breathe, learning how to relax and step back makes it possible. Again, just kind of like slowly unwind this. And I've been asking you like, oh, where are you working on? What are you working on? You're like, talk about me. Just have fun. I'm just having fun. And I think that's really like what I found on my YouTube channel and the content that I do is really like, yo, people, like you suffered enough. Like it's been hard enough. Like this next part, this healing part, what if this was light? What if this was easier? What if this was fun? Because shit's already been hard.
Yeah. what have you what have you learned so far through this painful journey? And I think, to be honest, as hard as this may sound to some individuals, I think you have to understand the big picture. To grow from pain is a sign of evolvement. To linger in pain is a sign of defeat, both emotionally, spiritually, and humanly. That's how I look at it. What's your take on this? You went through this journey. What are you most proud of with what you've accomplished and what you're doing for other individuals with your story and your artwork, which we're going to talk about in a minute?
Well, I think it actually ties to one of the pre-interview questions around what am I proud of, softness and playfulness. And I think that when you have gone through something hard, it's like Iron Man. Like you build a suit to get out of the cave, to break free, to go out, and then you've got this cool suit, like these X-Men adaptations that does all this cool stuff, but also separates you from regular life. And it's a process to take off the warrior gear
Mm.
and let life be a little different. Because as long as you're dressed as a warrior, you're gonna fight, and then that will be your life. And so I think becoming open again and willing to be fresh, to not be on guard, to allow myself to approach the moment with love and playfulness, like that has been an incredible accomplishment. To be here without all of that has been a really beautiful gift.
You seem to always have your Iron Man suit on.
Me?
Even during the pre-interview, I'm like, okay, this ain't about me. This is about you. What is it like for you to take off that suit and be you? And more importantly, I can tell a lot of you is in your artwork. How did your artwork come into um, you taking off the Iron Man suit?
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of like putting you in a position where your head really can't participate. So I think for me, I'm so grateful to the work that I do with people. It's such a blessing, and even the way that I receive through the giving, like it's been such a blessing. So like I do love the suit, and like I do get feedback like, oh, you could take it off a little, and I really do. But in art, it's a way to it's like dancing. You can't think and dance. You dance or you're not. With art, it's the same thing, and so it creates just a place for me to express without real like any ideas of how it should be.
Where do you get the inspiration when when you're painting and doing so much different artwork? Because you got tons of artwork on your social media page, and I noticed each one of them, you know, has a message woven within each stroke of the brush. Like, what are you thinking about when you're doing so much artwork? And is there really a lot of emotions tied into each one of those pieces when you're constructing a piece of art?
Well, in fairness, a lot of the art on my Instagram I sell for other artists. So some of that really great art isn't mine. But if you're interested, I can get it for you. And I'm really grateful to work with artists and kind of like expand their reach. The work that I do myself, I use more oil pastels, collage, and I call them inspiring words on canvas. And what it is for me is like throughout my house, I have just little signs, positive affirmations to remember this or to remind me of that. I'm trying to think of one I have right now. Like I have one over there that says "Let her fucking rip," like to kind of like program myself to let loose and trust my body, and another one that says line up with it. And so I make these pieces and I bless them and curate the energy around them and sell them in a couple locations so people who are working on something can keep that in mind, that they're supported, they can believe in themselves, and again, I do energetic curation around them to support them in that as well.
Explain exactly what energetic blah 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 means, because I forgot. I don't know how to pronounce the word.
Oh, curation is kind of like, if you get holy water,
Yeah.
it's like it's been blessed. And so the journey that I've been on has been very purifying and cleansing and brought me very close to God. And so I've been really grateful when I'm working with clients. It's energy healing, energy work. And so when I'm creating art, my intention goes around it to support whatever the initiative is. I probably won't a sec. Like this one is just a simple, these are just simple little canvases. It says you have the world at your doorstep. And the back says knock knock, it's yours, and keep it tight, keep it right. These are, again, just like little casual pieces, but um I will put intention, bless it, so that when somebody resonates with that as something that they're trying to remind themselves of, the opportunity that's present to stay focused, just sort of support them in that.
You mentioned your journey has brought you closer to a higher power in your life. Explain that a little bit. And how do you know
Uh,
it's brought you closer?
yeah, that's such an interesting thing to unravel. Uh, I guess it's experiential. I because of my ask to help with suffering, I really spent a lot of time exploring the mind. I think I told you yesterday. I spent several years just it's pretty much silence and contemplation, and learning to discern like different thoughts, feelings, where are they coming from, what do they mean, and with God, I sort of found like lifting up all these layers of thought, like under it is this vastness that we're all connected to and expressing from. And as such, I find like the best metaphor is like the human body. My hand is separate from the body, but not really. And as such, it befits the body that the hand is great. So God wants me to be well, to do well. It's good for the body. And allowing myself to relax into receiving that support and those resources. And just there's I guess like I've done a lot of experimentation, and I find that when I let that possibility exist, like life really is easier. It feels different. And so ultimately at the end of all of it, what I was left with is thankfulness. And I think you see that in people who do overcome challenging things, whether they're in a wheelchair or have cancer, or, you know, what you have left, you're so grateful for because you know what it is. And so I think too, it's just a relationship of love, like unconditional love of life. Like, thank you. Like I am.
You deal with a lot of people. What do you find is the most common thread that these individuals that you've come in contact with and that you work with all have in common as it pertains to their trauma and their recovery?
Oh, yeah. Uh, I guess it's lack of trust in self or lack of trust in life.
How do you get them past that?
I show them that it's sort of uh, silly to think that way. So a lot of the beliefs that hold us in place are like that elephant tied to a plastic chair. It started out tied that way and then it stays there because it thinks it can't move. So with clients, really all I'm ever doing is illustrating the unreality of some of the stories that they tell themselves.
What would you like to see change? You witness loss. You've witnessed emotional instability. Um, you witness growth and development. What are some of the things that you like to see changed in today's world?
Oh man, that's like my primary thing. I'm like this idea of a nicer world. We have so many resources, so many brilliant minds, so many possibilities. What I would love to see, let's see, I guess primarily kind of like an evolution of self respect. where somebody can come to, again, like honor their personal experience in such a way that they then learn how to honor someone else's. And through that, hopefully, some more productive conversations on how we can use resources or navigate competing interests, some more cohesive collaboration because we're all in this together.
Why do you think there is? Let me go back. How hard was it for you to forgive all of the wrongs that was impacted on you?
That's a good question. Well, I think that the hardest one to forgive was myself. And it's sort of ironic. I have a lot of content I've written and created around how we're essentially programmable flesh machines. You get ideas, you live out your ideas, but you're not your ideas. And so it took a lot of work for me to really accept that. Well, I have ownership of what I've done and the power to make new choices. It's a process. And it doesn't serve me to be when somebody holds themselves in guilt and shame, it has actually an ironic and funny counterproductive result. So, in being in guilt and shame and being in unforgiveness, what you think you're doing when you're punishing yourself is making up for what you've done. But really, it takes away from your ability to do better because you're not really here and you're not really available to the information that's here. And so, the best thing you can do for everybody is to forgive yourself. And that frees you up again to like be present to what's there to make a better choice.
Yeah, but most people find that easier said than done. So, what's your take on that?
My take is, yeah, it takes some practice. I think that the body really does, like your breathing is incredibly important. You know, the more that you're circling in your head, just recognize there's likely something you're trying not to feel. And while you can chase those chickens all day, you'll never catch them. And so if you can find it in your body and just, again, be with the feeling, be with the experience, don't try to change it, explain it, try it back to 1955, like, whatever, just be there with it. And then it somewhat resolves itself. It's wild.
How was you able to keep moving with your developmental skills as it relates to your father? Is he still with us?
Yeah.
So what's that relationship like now with your personal development as in a relationship with your father?
Well, I'd say it continues to evolve. At different points, at different places, I prioritize different elements of it. I We have a relationship. He texts me every day. Um, I find that it's not good for me to be very close to him, and that he's still living out some stories. And so I kind of curate it in a way that I'm comfortable, but still allowing like he's tried, and I do respect that.
When you say he's still living out his stories, what do you mean by that?
He still has kind of like there are certain interpretations he has that ways that he interprets in response to life that to me they don't feel good.
Was it difficult for you to, this is a two-part question. Did you ever open up your emotions to your father? And if it was, how difficult was it for you to do that? Because a part of life's journey through this is unleashing that emotional negative energy to some degree. And when you did do it, it had to be both painful and an enlightenment at the same time, but you had to give it to him. So what was that like?
Honestly, like he's a very complex, kind of like nuanced person, and at that time, like he really wanted to have a relationship with me and did his best. Like he really has, you know, he's limited, and I think that's important too when we're looking at ourselves and others, like limits of the system, and
Mm.
be reasonable about what you need to support where you are or to allow where somebody else is. And so he has at different points like apologized profusely and taken ownership from the view that he has. Is it different than mine? Yes. But I guess again, like I don't know if you can notice, but like you're like, hey, how about your dad? And I'm like, well, let's steer it this way. Like you're like, hey, and it's because I've really worked. I want to be in charge of my story now. Like these are things that I've been, these are things that I've experienced that I've contributed, that I've done my best to turn into something beautiful and useful. And if I continue to hold on to what created those things, like I
Mhm.
don't have room for anything else. And so as best I can, I've come to, you can't do that prematurely. You really have to let everything take the time it takes. But at this point, I'm really grateful to have room to hold other ideas, other things. And that's the messaging I would like to offer people who are going through it is that like you don't have to live that forever. Like you do have time to have life that you enjoy, but you really like to do that, it's important to put down the things that hurt you.
So really what you're saying is the way to stop the deep patterns of this behavior is to first start within yourself and start to rewrite your own narrative, because clearly you're not going to change his narratives and you're going to change anybody else's narrative. So I guess what you're saying is you start with yourself. This is the so-called breaking the patterns. Am I somewhat correct on this?
Yeah, and that's why I've come to like I synthesize all the work I do. Like I teach self love, and that's basically recognizing to me self love is a momentary choice. This is my personal experience. This moment of my personal experience, I can bring whatever I want into it. There's a lot of momentum of bringing other things or ideas I think about how it should be, but ultimately. Like, this is my moment. And self love to me is coming to see that it's okay that I feel good. And in allowing myself that I can do better for everyone. And so, yeah, inside out from the standpoint of that's unconditional love. Like I'm here in life and it's mine. And I want to be respectful of other people's experiences. I want to be available to them, but it's only possible if the integrity of my personal system is honored.
What's your end game? What's the big message here for the viewers? You've overcome so much. You're smiling like crazy. That means you're enjoying life. You found a deep gratification within inside yourself. You clearly have broken the deep patterns, and it starts within yourself. To be honest, let's get real. It's you know we came in alone. We leave alone. But what's the end game for you?
Well, I think and again, like intuitively and kind of like pushing for what you're focusing on, fun, like this is it. Like all my content, also, not all, the majority of my content also points to like where you're trying to go is right here. What you want to do is feel good here.
Yeah.
You can't go back and change anything. You can't go forward and, protect it. Like this is my end game. This is the moment. Like my end game is to do the best I can with what I have right now.
I call it here and now.
Yeah, the here and now,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
have a
yeah.
good time. Like it doesn't have to be, it doesn't, like, I think with trauma, you get so used to things hurting that it's comforting. And to be without your pain creates a need for an identity change. And your whole worldview has to shift to accommodate that, man, that whole time it sucked, it didn't suck for everybody. Because I think when you're in trauma, in some ways, the story you tell yourself is this is life. And it's not to say that everyone doesn't, most people don't encounter something, but there is room to be brighter and lighter and to have a more harmonious experience of life. And if you're coming from trauma, that's really hard to imagine, but it's real.
What are three pieces of advice that you would give to the viewers who are trying to do what you said, self love, and remove or stop these, let's call it what it is, breaking these patterns? What are the three advices you will give the viewers?
That's good. Well, again, like tying back, and I know we started off a little heavier, but I do find that like lightness makes room for things to change too. So like use your seventh sense, like your sense of humor. Like try to break what you're in enough so that you can see it. Truth. Humor also affords some level of truth. So as awful as it is, see if you can allow yourself to find something that lifts your spirits, opens you up a little, and beyond that, being as gentle with yourself as possible. Oh my God, no matter how many times it takes, how many times you spill it over, how many times you fuck it up, it doesn't like as gentle with yourself as possible. Come here, honey, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay, I know. That was the eighth time. That's okay. Like, come on, come on, come on. And the third one is just minimizing your narratives, because while they seem like you're helping, and particularly true with really bright people who've gone through stuff, you want to understand.
Right.
You want to understand so you can control it doesn't happen anymore. And so you create all of this, all files and files and files and files of all this information so that you know what you did, what they did, how to blah, 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 blah. And the more that you're in therapy, like the more filing cabinets you have, and before you know it, like you're just in this room and you can't see anything, you're just there with your ideas. So like just being mindful that the story that in your head, none of them are it. Life doesn't fit in your head. Life's out here. And just take the story long enough that it takes you to the next place, like trapeze bars. Let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. And to do that, one does have to become comfortable in the body, and that's from the second one where you're present with yourself. You're okay. That's like the self hug. Self hug is like my thing. It's like self hug is the new self help. You just breathe. You're right here. It's okay. We're okay. We're okay. Like this is my plan for world peace.
Okay.
You're okay. You're
That's
okay.
that's a good plan too. I hope that they take heed to it and employ it in today's uh, conflicting war, world of worlds. Before we leave, how can the viewers reach out to you and support what you're doing?
Thank you. Thank you. They can find me at habitbook.com or on Instagram, Shaylee __ Edwards. And from either of those places, you can find all of my links.
Shelley, thanks so much for coming on and sharing a beautiful story of beautiful, let me call it what it is, self love. That's just pretty much what it is. It's a beautiful story of self love. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.